Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Yeah, there's another story about money that we want to talk about. It's about predatory lending.
Without a doubt, this story you must pay attention to. It was revealed last week that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau finished, said forget about it, a lawsuit against a large payday loan operation accused of gouging its clients. Golden Valley Lending, an online firm in California, was accused of charging interest rates, please listen, as high as 950%. And remember, who goes to payday lenders? The most vulnerable people on short-term loans. Mick Mulvaney, President Trump's budget director, who is now also running the CFPB, and he has been a harsh critic of the agency. He's promised to scale the agency back. He took the unusual step of requesting $0 for the Bureau's second quarter budget and wrote that it will no longer push the envelope. Push the envelope against payday lenders for fact's sake. In some cases, pushing the envelopes on companies that prey on people is exactly what we should be doing. Payday lending is marketed as a convenient way for millions of poor Americans with no credit to get a small loan in a pinch, so long as you have a job, a checking account, and a valid form of identification. For every $100 you want, you can pay a $15 fee and take out a 2-week loan. The industry markets these loans as a quick lifesaver when an emergency hits, almost like an advance on your next paycheck. 7 out of 10 borrowers use payday loans to finance reoccurring expenses like rent, groceries, and electricity, or to pay down previous payday debts. See, payday lenders make their money off repeat borrowing at loan shark rates, with effective rates averaging 400% annually, some rates as high as 950%. That would mean when taking out a $300 loan could end up paying $2,850 in fees alone. So why is this happening? First, payday lenders say they need to charge their customers super high rates because they carry super high risk of default. Second, unlike longer-term loans, borrowers, they're expected to pay the total amounts they owe within a period of weeks. But a whopping 80% of borrowers say they cannot afford to make full lump sum payments. They roll their balances into new payday loans within the 2-week period. It's no wonder almost 12 million Americans taking out payday loans each year wind up spending $9 billion on loan fees. Even so, payday lenders insist they do not market their product as, quote, long-term financial solutions. Yet, according to the Pew Charitable Trust, the payday business model encourages borrowers to pay hundreds of dollars in fees, none of which count as payments toward their underlying loans. Critics say that kind of business model fuels a cycle of loans, renewals, exorbitant fees, and even more debt, which is kind of the point. It should come as no surprise that 15 states already ban high-cost payday lending. Why this predatory practice is not a higher priority for the Trump administration is anyone's guess. This just blows my mind, Allie. If Mick Mulvaney wants to say creating the CFPB was an overreach, that agency doesn't make sense, fine. You can get rid of that agency.
And still fix this problem.
You need to get rid of going after the bad guys.
Right. Now, this is a really big problem. And many of you out there who are watching us probably don't fit into the demographic where you experience payday loans. But if you get into that demographic, it is really hard because it's a model that fuels a cycle of debt. You just can't get out of it. It sounds like a relief for you when you need money for a short amount of time, but people end up stuck in these loans. You think you're paying off interest, you're just paying off fees, and the interest rates are hundreds of percent.
And that's exactly how they make their money. And I just want to say, so while they're marketing, hey, we're here to help you in a short-term situation, they don't make money that way. They make money because people go back and back, and they ask for more payday loans so they can pay back their old ones.
But I think you know the answer to why they don't fix this and why Mick Mulvaney doesn't fix this.
I'm not going to say I know the answer, but I will point out that Mick Mulvaney received almost $63,000 for his campaigns. Do you know from whom? Payday lending groups as a congressman. Corey Lewandowski, when he was lobbying for a payday lender, saying get rid of the CFPB. So Mick Mulvaney, please, I get it. You've got donors, you need to feed them, but payday lenders, the most predatory business practice to the most vulnerable Americans.
You'd be surprised and shocked by the degree to which payday lenders and their lobby have an influence on this particular administration.
It's a disgrace.
It is Tuesday, the 27th of February of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. It is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, folks. That's right. That is our daily special, and you may be able to tell that I have a little bit of a scratchy throat from, I guess it was the flu, and it was some sort of weird flu. Fortunately, and knock on wood, it happened quick, and I won't have a relapse. So, one must take care with these ailments because, especially if you're caring for someone who needs to be cared for, as I am doing. It worries me. My mom did get the full spectrum flu shot, the pneumonia shots, and all of that, but so there's and I did too. But there's little other strains that are slipping through the cracks, and so it can be worrisome. But bear with me. Back in the days, people would say, "Oh, that just sounds sexy." Yeah, well, it sounds scratchy to me. Okay, well, that was Stephanie Rule and Velshi talking about Mick Mulvaney. Now, I don't agree with Velshi and Rule that, Mulvaney just wants to get rid of the CFPB. That's one thing, but, no, that's not one thing. The whole being of the CFPB was payday lenders, predatory lenders. That was the catalyst. That was the citation in which to get it up off the ground. So Mick Mulvaney, he's an evil little gnome troll. And people better be going to jail. And I don't just mean the principals involved in the upper echelons of this. I'm talking about people like Mick Mulvaney. Maybe he ought to be going to jail. At least department heads and appointments, and I would even proffer Supreme Court appointees should be made to step down, and we should have an investigation and figure out a proper way to figure out what the hell went on, and then a proper way in which to move forward. But that's never going to happen. But Trump has been rage tweeting all morning, and he's pretty mad because Mueller indicted Manafort or charged Manafort and Gates with even more crimes, including conspiracy against the U.S. Now, that's a pretty serious charge. In the 50s, that would have put you in the electric chair. Just saying. So it's no surprise that Mulvaney is doing what he's doing. Deconstructing the administrative state? Maybe. Seems so. Now, at the end of January, let me just read a little synopsis of what this is all about. At the end of January, oh, by the way, this is by Nicole Bell out of Crooks and Liars. Mulvaney is particularly and specifically attacking Elizabeth Warren, because the CFPB, of course, is her brainchild. So at the end of January, Senator Elizabeth Warren, along with Representative Maxine Waters and 4 other congressional Democrats, wrote acting CFPB Director Mick Mulvaney on actions seen benefiting to payday lenders. They asked why the CFPB halted implementation of a rule on payday lending, dismissed a case against 4 payday lenders, and halted an investigation into an installment lender. Mulvaney, they pointed out, received $60,000 in contributions from the industry when he was in Congress. Now, in a letter released on Friday directed at Warren, Mulvaney fired back, saying the decisions were not based on any motivation other than a, quote, careful examination of the laws and facts particular to the matter. He further chided Warren in particular for a lack of civil discourse and insinuated that her vote against repealing the arbitration rule was because of campaign donations she received from trial lawyers. So, you get that? Mulvaney didn't actually respond to their concerns. He just punched back. Because that's what you do in the Trump administration. Deny, deny, deny. That's right. When they go to a debate, they don't come with a truncheon, they come with a sledgehammer. Whatever you say, they're going to hit you over the head with it harder. Okay. Well, once again, accountability for American citizens just goes out the window, because when you're deconstructing the administrative state to the point where you can drown it in a bathtub, that way it makes it much easier for a hostile foreign power to, what's the term? Take over? I don't know. I joke about the tinfoil hat aspect of all that, but I don't know. I think, hasn't that been the prime directive of active measures of the Russians for 70 odd years? Maybe more. Well, what else is on the menu today? Well, I'll tell you, we're going to start off in the Bistro Cafe, noting that it's not every day that a sitting congressman is accused of perpetrating fraud, not only against the public, but against his own company's customers. Yeah, this is an Iowa state rep. Set up a sham company and then charged his customers sham amounts to, well, we'll explain further in that story. And the historic West Virginia teacher strike continues into its 4th day. It looks like they may be going into a 5th day. And Students for Trump won't reveal who's bankrolling their group, despite FEC warnings. Yeah, we already know of an Italian fascist with a bunch of money who's been bankrolling them. I wonder who else might be. After the break, we move to the chef's table to consider the dismissal by a federal judge in Manhattan of a lawsuit seeking to overturn the United States' long-standing prohibition of cannabis because they didn't go through administrative protocol with the DEA first. Because that's how it works. When you redress your government, you don't get to go to the courts in this situation. Nope. You got to go through the DEA, who has a vested interest in making sure they keep their jobs. Let's be clear. And only local lawyers in the Philippines can stop Duterte's murderous war on drugs. But to win, they need international human rights groups to give them more help. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. first article here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Look it up. Put it together quite a few times. Yeah, well, I'm just telling you, a little bit of paprika is the secret, okay? As it always is. Hot Hungarian. Well, this first article is by Steve Bennon, and he writes for the Maddo blog. Imagine that. At first blush, it sounded like a rather mundane controversy. Representative Rod Blum, Republican of Iowa, a top target for Democrats in this year's midterms, reportedly violated House ethic rules by failing to disclose his role in a company that he formed. One of these many oversights you see happen in, almost like all levels of government. Who knew? Well, given the scope of some of the recent political scandals we've seen, Blum's disclosure issue seemed easy to overlook. But the AP had a longer report on the Iowa Republicans' mysterious outfit, which suggests this story is a lot more interesting than first assumed. Representative Rod Blum was one of two directors of the Tin Moon Corp. when the internet marketing company was incorporated in May of 2016, as the Republican was serving his first term. A business filing shows. Now, this is the AP article. Among other services, Tin Moon promises to help companies cited for federal food and drug safety violations bury their FDA administration warning below positive internet search results. Oh my God. Well, if you never had Yelp, you never would have had this problem, would you? Now, Bloom said in a statement on Wednesday evening that he made, an oversight in failing to disclose his ties to the company on his personal financial disclosure covering calendar year 2016, which he submitted last August. I think that was in 2017, wouldn't it have been? That takes a while then. He said he was amending the form to list his role as director of the company of Tin Moon as an asset, even while he downplayed the significance of the matter. Well, that's what you do. You got one set of book for the banks, and you got another set of book for the IRS. How else do mobster grifters do it? So, while serving in Congress, Rod Blum helped create a sketchy-looking company intended to help those who are accused of violating FDA standards. The GOP congressman was featured on the company's website in a photo featuring his congressional member spin. See, I'm GOP, you can count on me. Was required to disclose his role in the business, but did not. What's more, as the AP report noted, the business is based in the same Iowa offices as a construction software company that Bloom also owns. The congressman called the disclosure failure an administrative oversight, which is not exactly a compelling defense. Yeah, that's right. Accountants and CPAs go to jail all the time for, what is this now? Administrative oversight. And, when you thought it was going to sound bad, it's even worse. Because, what he was doing? He not only set up this company to help people get around FDA warning letters and move those letters and warnings down to the bottom of search results. We'll put it in, you pay us a certain amount, we'll make sure it's, they got to search 1 million times before they get to you. Or at least several 100,000. He was lying. He even told the people, I put your search results way down there. He's using fake metrics from another sham company that he owned. Okay. But there's another description of another principal, this administrative fellow, what was in a testimonial video as a customer saying, worked for me, he's going to work for you. Not, telling anybody that he was an administrative assistant or a member of the company that this guy Bloom owned. But then he had no idea why his chief of staff appeared in that testimonial pretending to be a customer of the company his boss helped create. Yeah. Well, that's what psychopaths do, especially when you're getting paid. Bloom also told the AP that the controversial business was not a functioning company in 2016, which seems hard to believe since his chief of staff's phony endorsement of the company was uploaded in September of 2016. And, so when the AP asked Melanie Sloan, a former executive director of Crew, about the Iowa congressman's problem, she said, "There's no gray here. He just can't do what he's doing. We were just laughing about it because it's so ridiculous." So Rod Blum, who has been at the center of a variety of unfortunate controversies, represents one of Iowa's most competitive districts. He's also chairman of the House Small Business Committee, though under sane circumstances, and there's the qualifier, sane. House Republican leaders would take another look at whether it is a good idea to have someone facing these allegations in such a role, but here it's a prerequisite. Next article here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is out of the Charleston Gazette-Mail. Now, I refer to this as the historic West Virginia teacher strike. Many people conflate the strike back in the 90s, which was the only time that they went on a strike, as being a statewide one. That was actually only, I believe, 12 counties. And that wasn't actually the whole state. This has been a statewide strike among all counties and municipalities in the state of West Virginia. And now it will be continuing into its fourth day. Jim Justice gave a wacko appearance last night at one of these supposed town halls where he made some sort of joke about, "You're not all going to shoot me now, are you?" Making some sort of weird veiled insult that the teachers were nothing more than a crazed madman with an AR-15. Because he's in a school and that kind of BS. Because, "Oh, well, I guess I've been bullying you, but, sometimes these teachers need to be put in a place." Yeah, well, Jim Justice... Oh, and by the way, no relation. Actually, I should look that up. Because Justice is my grandmother's maiden name. Oh, my God. Wouldn't that be terrible? Oh, did you know that I'm related to the former U.S. Senator from Florida, Claude Pepper? Yeah. That's another familial relation. Visited with him very late in his life. Everybody knew of him. So, I'll just say that. In the family. So there's threats of legal action. The governor signed Senate Bill 267 into law last week. It raises the pay of teachers, school service personnel, and state troopers by 4% over 3 years. Additionally, the state froze the current public employees insurance age benefit plan before certain premium hikes could take effect. But union leaders said the raises are insufficient for what teachers and school workers deserve, and that the move is a stall, not a structural fix. So, after a contentious Senate floor session Monday night with some people still yelling from the Senate galleries, teachers, Carmichael, one of the representatives there, said teachers should end the strike. It's incredibly disappointing to hear you people chanting. Oh, wait a second. This is West Virginia. It's incredibly disappointing to hear you people chanting from up in the galleries, being disrespectful to the process and so forth, he said, responding to the extension of the work stoppage. "I think it's being disrespectful to our students, to our parents, to all those associated with providing an education to our students. It is imperative that the teachers of our schools get back to work, and we implore them to do so." He said the legislature had already done all it can to help you poor miscreants get back to teaching, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And you better put a little bit more emphasis on that arithmetic. In fact, I don't know. Earth is flat. If it adds up, it adds up. Well, actually, maybe arithmetic would prove the Earth is flat, because you need a little bit of calculus to be able to, make that curve. Okay, so floods of teachers and service personnel filled the Capitol halls outside the legislative chambers during the 11 a.m. floor sessions, chanting, singing, and dancing yesterday. Before the rally, they began filling the south steps of the Capitol in anticipation. Between the red and blue shirts worn by the activists, an unusually warm and sunny day for late February. Inflatable beach balls bouncing around the crowd, and Tom Petty and Journey songs playing over the speakers. The rally might have looked more like a 4th of July event rather than a union rally. Excuse me, local paper. I don't see the difference between the 4th of July and a union party. Aren't we all patriots? Just trying to get the job done. God, these people. And Lawrence Messina, spokesman for the Department of Military Affairs and Public Safety, said more than 5,300 people entered the Capitol building on Monday. That's not counting the people who are outside, and you should see the crowds. It is huge, and it is amazing. Up here on the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is our daily special. His article out of Raw Story by the great Sarah K. Burris. The college organization Students for Trump has not disclosed who its donors are since July of 2016, despite being legally required to do so. We don't need your stinking restrictions. A Daily Beast report explained that Students for Trump coordinated with the Trump campaign during the 2016 election to get out the vote for millennials and run a social media advocacy campaign. Oh, you mean like a Russian troll bot farm? Could that be it? Okay. Despite questions about troll farms in Russia paying for a robust social media campaign, the Political Action Committee has not been questioned by the Federal Elections Commission as to who their donors were. The FEC has sent a series of 9 letters since it was formed in July 2016, asking for the legally required disclosure reports, yet they received no reports. The group blamed their former treasurer for the lack of the filing. Well, that's convenient. As you will see, all records are under John Lambert, who is no longer with Students for Trump and has not been with us for some time, Mia Chamberlain, a spokeswoman, said in an email to the Beast. An FEC filing was officially filed, however, due to certain changes in the past, a request was sent in to nullify the filings. Okay, we want to keep the money and not tell you where it came from. Or maybe it's already been spent. She went on to say that the founder and chair, Ryan Fournier, is unsure as to why it didn't go through, as he was not the agent who prepared and sent in the documentation. Well, did you put your signature on it or not? And if you didn't, why? It's unclear how the treasurer being gone explains why no report has been filed for 19 months. You know, when I took over a particularly well-known beer pub in brew pub in Berkeley. I inherited a tax lien. Now, I wasn't a principal owner in the place. I was just responsible for making sure that we had the money to pay these quarterly payments every quarter. Oh, my God, what a pain in the rear that was. Don't ever get into a tax lien. You don't want to do it. And inheriting one, when I say inheriting one, like I almost went into a business where I would inherit a tax lien. In my experience, just being the office account manager, it was on Telegraph and Parker. You'll figure it out. Everybody knows anyway, because the first people who owned that brew pub, made really shitty beer. And no wonder they didn't pay their taxes. All right. They had a good idea. They just made shitty beer. All right. So what has gone on in the midst of this is, the Brendan Fisher of the Campaign Legal Center said it sounds like they don't know what they're doing. Well, they're just kids. Notice the kids that are in this well-funded public school, who got shot at. And then these, coddled rich people, children. Well, I don't know. It's all the same, isn't it? Well, one of the avid supporters and former national director of the group was Italian real estate developer Guido Lombardi, who worked as a go-between for the Trump campaign and right-wing leaders and parties in Europe. Okay, I thought we weren't supposed to do that, but you know me. Fournier claimed Students for Trump had more than 5,000 student members belonging to the hundreds of chapters in approximately 40 states. Yet the political group is not classified as a nonpartisan nonprofit organization. Since the election, however, the organization has been mostly inactive, though as a legally active PAC, it is required to abide by the law. The failure to timely file a complete report may result in civil money penalties, an audit, or legal enforcement action, FEC letters warn. If the PAC filed this disclosure, of course, we would be aware of the donors of the group and how the money was spent and where. All right, let's go to our break. We'll come back and sit around the chef's table, and I'll give you the weather from around the world, and then finish up with the stories at the chef's table. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, when truth is scarier than fiction, sometimes the baddest, most memorable villains come from real life. James Whitey Bulger is a perfect example. Bulger became one of the most notorious and powerful underworld figures in the Northeast thanks to his alliance with the local FBI branch. Black Mass, which is based on the book by the same name, looks at that alliance between Bulger and the corrupt FBI agent John Conley, played by Joel Edgerton in a decidedly unglamorous role. Unlike many mob movies, Black Mass doesn't waste time on backstories that aren't relevant. This is smart on the part of director Scott Cooper because there is enough material here for several movies. However, by focusing squarely on Bulger and his rise and eventual fall, the movie has a fast-paced feeling to it that belies the fact it is 122 minutes. While Cooper and the film editor deserve credit for this, Johnny Depp also deserves recognition for his mesmerizing performance as Bulger. While Depp is arguably one of the best actors of his generation, many of his recent over-the-top performances have left audiences cold. This one does not. Bulger's creepiness comes from his subtlety. Depp, who was well known for getting into character, collaborated with longtime makeup artist Joel Harlow to physically become Bulger, right down to his ice blue eyes, which are as cold and unflinching as a Boston winter night. He rarely raises his voice and instead prefers to let his actions speak for him. He's a psychopath in the truest sense of the word and commits some of the most chilling on-screen murders in recent cinematic history, even though very little actual violence is shown. While Black Mass may not be the best crime movie of all time, it is nonetheless very good and reminds us that award season is here. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on the Take Two Movie Review page on YouTube.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Today, the nations of the world are increasingly dependent on each other. Nations have many ways of interacting. One example is cultural, scientific, and business exchanges. Doctors, scientists, educators, and business people from many countries meet to share advances in their fields. Another example is humanitarian aid. During natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes, countries help the victims in other countries by sending medicine, food, and shelter to suffering people. Nations also interact through trade. Countries buy and sell factory goods, farm products, and services to one another. Another example is diplomacy, which is the practice of carrying on formal relationships with governments of other countries. The official representatives of countries meet and discuss issues important to their governments. They work together in a peaceful manner to find solutions to common problems. Countries also make treaties and agreements. For example, they agree to promote trade among themselves and to protect the environment. Some agree to help each other in time of war. However, when two or more countries cannot solve their disagreements peacefully, they sometimes threaten to use military force. Sometimes the disagreement results in a war. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
How rigged are the elections for the United States House of Representatives? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In 2016, in the popular vote for Congress, Republican candidates beat Democratic candidates by 1%, 49 to 48. That 1% difference in the popular vote translated into a 47-seat majority for Republicans in the House. We're talking primarily here about gerrymandering. And before the United States Supreme Court now are cases that raise the issue whether gerrymandering, no matter how grotesque and partisan, still is permissible. Meanwhile, one state, at least, is doing its best to restore democracy. In Pennsylvania, in 2016, Republican congressional candidates won 8% more votes than Democrats. With the result, the Republicans were awarded 13 of 18 congressional seats, or 72%. In other words, the 8% margin in the popular vote became a 44% margin in the number of seats won. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just struck down that state's congressional map as violating the state constitution, and the United States Supreme Court in all likelihood will not touch that decision because it's based on the state constitution and not the federal. Which leads us back to the cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, which will decide by the end of its term in June whether congressional maps can be drawn so as to almost ensure the result before any ballots are cast. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, February 26, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger.
What do we want? Fair pensions! What do we want it? Now! They want you! We deserve a pension.
In the United Kingdom, academic staff at 64 universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, are striking over 14 days to protect their pensions. More than 1 million students are being affected by the strike. The universities are demanding that the lecturers agree to a change in their pension plans which could drastically cut payouts. Here are some of the people walking the picket lines.
So we're on strike today because the employers at the universities want to end a fundamentally important part of our pensions, which we've always known that if we put a certain amount into our pensions, we know we're going to get something guaranteed at the end. They want to get rid of that. They want to basically say you put money in, it goes on the stock markets, it's on stocks and shares, and what you get out at the end is totally dependent on that. I mean, to me, at a time when you've got vice-chancellors getting, sort of hundreds of thousands of pounds in remuneration, what this is just a way of cutting what you're giving to the ordinary staff so that you can raise profits for people at the top.
We do feel an obligation to our students, and as a result of that, we're striking very reluctantly with a heavy heart, but we also feel very angry about the fact that we're stand to lose so much over a pension. Many of the people behind me are young lecturers who are just starting out their careers, and their prospects are even more dire than someone like me who's been in the profession for about 20 years.
When universities generally seems to me to be generating much more money than they have done in the past, so taking a lot more students on, they're paying a lot more fees. yet the people that are at the front line of coping with that situation and making sure those students get a good education are not really being supported. So the senior managers are tending to put money into big projects and also pay themselves more than they probably should sometimes.
The real people who are losing out here are the people on strike. They're losing like 14 days of wages and potentially like just a huge chunk of their pensions. It's not about the students, it's about the workers.
In the United States, the Supreme Court has started to hear a case which could result in the defunding of public employee and teacher unions. The central issue is focused on so-called fair share fees. These are fees levied on workers in a unionized workplace who have opted to not join the union, but still benefit from the union bargaining on their behalf. The case is named Janus versus the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME. Mark Janus, an employee of the state of Illinois, was picked by a collection of right-wing organizations to front the attack on unions. Thousands of workers around the country held pro-union demonstrations on Saturday, February 24th. Liz Schuller, the secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO, spoke to a rally in Washington. The AFL-CIO is the largest labor federation in the United States.
Now, Mark Janus and his corporate backers want to make life harder for those who have chosen public service. And I think if Mr. Janus doesn't like the pay and the benefits and the rights that he has negotiated by his union, then why doesn't he try working in a non-union workplace and leave us alone? But no matter what he and his corporate friends do, we have the power to make this Janus case irrelevant. What do I mean by that? Well, if we unleash a whole national campaign like we're doing today to demonstrate the value of unions throughout the labor movement, if we show that the labor movement is the best way to make change, the best way to bring people together for a voice, and we make ourselves essential to everyone's lives, they're going to want to join unions, and Janus will be irrelevant.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. The UN Security Council passed a resolution Saturday calling for a 30-day ceasefire across Syria. The council was racing to stop civilian deaths caused by the Assad government's assault on the Damascus suburb of Ghouta. The UN vote was repeatedly delayed as the Syrian government worked to add in specific language allowing operations against terrorists affiliated with the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda to continue. But less than 2 days after the resolution kicked in, the list of violations is already long and includes the very areas the international community was most concerned about. The Syrian government has now said its bombing of Ghouta is an anti-terror operation and will continue, and even Turkey is trying to take advantage of the terrorism loophole, arguing that a military invasion in northwestern Syria targeting Kurds allied with the U.S. is an anti-terror mission, despite the fact that the Kurdish groups under attack aren't designated by the Security Council as terrorists. Time and again, in the 7-year Syrian civil war, countering lawlessness with more laws never seems to work. And get used to the phrase Chinese President Xi Jinping. Xi is wrapping up the first of 2 5-year terms in office, and his re-election has never been in doubt. But over the weekend, China's Communist Party announced its intention to abolish term limits, clearing the way for Xi to stick around once his official term runs out in 2023. China doesn't need to look back far for reminders about why it instituted term limits in the first place. China's leader in the 1980s, Deng Xiaoping, helped create what he called a retirement system for the country's rulers, recommending term limits to stop the rise of leaders like Mao Zedong and the cult of personality that kept him in charge for 33 years. For more global news headlines, visit talkmedianews.com. Thank you for accompanying us to the chef's table here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Hot Hungarian. That's the secret. Okay. Well, we always start off with a palate cleanser, and that being world weather from around the world. And we began along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. It's currently 21 degrees, and according to the Weather Underground, it even feels like 21. And that's a pretty, well, it seems accurate to what my temperature gauge here is at the mothership here in the little village of Rogue River in Oregon. So we're supposed to be a tad warmer today. We're going to ostensibly go up to 47 degrees. We'll see. And then plummet down to 31 degrees tonight with a showers late turning to a mix of rain and snow showers overnight until tomorrow. And then we should be back into, which we're now not under an active winter weather advisory, but it will be in effect. I don't know, beginning probably around 4 a.m. West Coast time. Air quality is not so good. It's only moderate at 56 parts per million. So if your air quality index is like that in your area, and you have breathing problems, take care. Dry conditions will continue, except we consider dry conditions when it's only 86% humidity. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.27 inches. Visibility is now up to 7 miles. And, so weather from around the world is brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. They put these weather stations, planted them somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. Okay. Trying to pop peas. That's what I'm trying to do. London is 30 and partly cloudy. Paris is 27 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 37 and sunny. Kiev is 12 degrees with snow. Kabul is 41 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong, 65 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 44 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 64 and clear. San Francisco, California is 43 degrees and sunny. And New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. They planted these personal weather stations on their property. And these people live around the world. Okay, first article here at the Chef's Table in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Brenda Pearson and writing for Reuters. A federal judge yesterday dismissed a lawsuit seeking to overturn the U.S.'s long-standing prohibition on cannabis on the grounds that the ban was unconstitutional, with the judge finding that the issue could not be decided by the court. All right. U.S. District Judge Alvin Hellerstein in Manhattan ruled that the lawsuit must be dismissed because the plaintiffs had failed to use administrative procedures within the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, to challenge the ban. Now, Hellerstein said this decision should not be understood as a factual finding that cannabis lacks any medical use in the United States, but rather that the authority to make that decision lies with the DEA and not the court. Enforcement. Okay, the plaintiffs include the parents of 2 children who use cannabis to treat illness, and former National Football League player Marvin Washington, who works with a company that develops cannabis-based products. They keep using the M word, and our style manual forbids it here at Netroots Radio. Because, I'll say it once, marijuana is a trope steeped in racism, and stop using it, please. Use cannabis, pot, weed, grass, hoochie hoo, I don't care, just not the M word. Thank you. Now, lawyers for the plaintiffs said in a statement that they would appeal the decision, which came nearly 2 months after U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions' supposed. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced he would abandon a policy of former President Barack Obama that had left regulation of the drug largely up to the states. Several states, including California, Colorado, and Washington, have legalized cannabis for recreational use, and 29 states allow some medical use. One of the children in the lawsuit, Alexis Bortel, successfully treats seizures using the drug, while another named Yagercoat has used it to alleviate pain associated with a neurological condition called Lay's disease. And under the 1970 Controlled Substances Act, cannabis is classified as a Schedule I drug, meaning that it is considered to have a high potential for abuse and no medical use. And other Schedule I drugs include heroin and LSD, which actually, if you talk to a few psychiatrists and behavioral modification, and those people will say, oh yeah, actually LSD has some great medical use. All right, but what does the court know? How are they supposed to adjudicate these things? Give it to the cops. Let them figure it out.
Dansez maintenant sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Dansez maintenant et jetez vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
If you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you notice the chat room link on the rightish of the page. Roaring Girl monitors that quite diligently through the day. You can also contact me at Justice Putnam on Twitter. Tom monitors our at Netroots Radio Twitter handle, and you can also contact me or check out my work, the show notes and links on my blog and diary at Daily Coast, where I can be found as Justice Putnam. Also, the contribute donate links are to the rightish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage. That's how we pay our bills, and we are much obliged for your great generosity. All right, finishing up here in the Chef's Table part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article by Anthony Lowenstein out of Foreign Policy magazine. And unfortunately, it looks like I've reached my limit. Even though I bookmarked this for later reading, they consider that just by the mere fact that I opened it up once, now that I've opened it up twice, I've met my limit for the month. Well, I know I'm going to have to make a subscription to this magazine because we do utilize it quite often. Now, it's local lawyers are fighting to hold the Philippine government accountable for this murderous war on drugs that Duterte has imposed. And when they're going to need international human rights groups to give them more help. And the Philippines under Duterte has been consistently violating an international law. And the local lawyers do have a bit of law left on their side in the Philippines. And since the Philippines are signatories to various international human rights organizations, including the UN, they do come under those auspices. And these international rights groups and those based in the United States might need a little bit of help. Though we have a guy in the White House right now who fantasizes about killing drug dealers himself or drug users. He just fantasizes about killing people, and I think that it might be people of color primarily. That would be fun for him, I'm sure. He's expressed this. He wants to kill people who are taking and selling drugs. Now, there might be an argument to be said or argued for pharmaceutical company executives maybe being tried under a death penalty for their egregious acts. I don't think he means that. But if we're going to attend to the opioid crisis, maybe there might need to be some kind of deterrent to prevent these greedy monsters from just making money off the backs of people suffering? Or do we take a more moderated approach and find out what really is medicine and try to prescribe it responsibly? And I don't know. Well, that's part of it. But also, you know, I noticed Duterte was taking a few drinks when Trump was meeting with him over there, and it wasn't water. So this is just one of an authoritarian's expressions of his own authority. I can kill people with impunity because I can. I'm the leader. Get out of my way. And this is a gross violation of international and human rights. And really, something needs to be done. And if we had a proper leadership in our government that wasn't so beholden to human rights violations, I know that we've done human rights violations and have aligned ourselves with those types who have done that in the past. And sadly, maybe now. But we need to make a stand. And maybe that might be a good plank in the Democratic Party. Again. All right. We have reached the end of our broadcast period for today, but we will be back tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. That's our daily special for Wednesdays. So stay tuned for more breaking news on Netroots Radio. That'll be happening throughout the day. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.